Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us for this virtual college exploration for all Ohio students. We're very excited to have you and for you to participate in these sessions. I'm going to go over a few announcements before I turn it over to our presenters. First of all, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A button to put your questions in there, and they will respond to those throughout the presentation or at the end. Your camera as a student is off, as well as your microphone. So that's why we encourage you to use the Q&A function. You can sign up for additional sessions like this through the OACAC website, which is oacac.org. And a recording of this session, along with all of the other sessions that we are offering, are available on that same website. So I'm going to turn it over now to our presenters, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Leanne and I am just trying to find the presentation to share with you. It has disappeared.
And while doing that, I'll just say good day. I'm Todd of St. Vrain from the University of Melbourne.
Hi everyone, my name is Tori Ellenberger. I work for Deakin University in Australia, also located in Melbourne.
Perfect. My name's Leanne Allen and I represent Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. We're very excited you are joining us here today. We're going to give you a quick snapshot on Australian education, and then we will go through the benefits of studying there and each of our individual universities as well. And our contact details will be available at the end. So we look forward to following up and talking to you about your adventures in Australia. We thought we would just start with COVID-19 in Australia. Australia has done quite a good job of flattening the curve, although we have had a second wave recently that is now flattening again, which is very good. The reason we say this is Australia's borders are currently closed, and so only Australian students can enter Australia, but we are certainly hoping that from 2021 students will be able to enter, and if not, hopefully students will be able to start online and then transition to Australia once it's safe to do so. All right, passing it on.
Okay, everyone. So a lot of us have heard about Australia, you know, the g'day mate and all of that. But some of the things we might not know when we think about Australia is a little bit about the geography. So it's similar in size to the US, but the population is quite different. So the population of Australia is 25 million. That would be only around 2 times the population of Ohio. So for the whole country, it's quite a small population, but a vast geography of land. So if you look around the edges of the country, most people are living within 60 miles of the coast. So everyone's right near a beach. And in the middle, it's more deserts and barren land. Another fun fact about Australia is that 1 in 4 people that live there were not born there. So it's quite diverse and multicultural. As far as the universities go within Australia, there's 43 universities. 40 of them are public, 2 are international, and only 1 is private. And much like the population, you can see that a lot of the universities are concentrated around the outer edges of the country. This slide is always fun to talk through, having studied in Ohio myself and knowing quite intimately the differences between the 2 systems. So essentially, I'd just like to touch on a few points to help you understand sort of what is the difference with regard to studying in Australia versus studying in the US. So in the US, most universities allow students to enter as undecided or undeclared. And that's because a number of the courses that you take at university in the US are those general electives. In Australia, we typically expect that students would be knowing what they would want to study. And so there aren't those general elective requirements at most Australian universities. That's another reason why the degrees in Australia are only 3 years as opposed to the 4 in the US. In the US, students can switch majors quite easily. In Australia, it's possible, but typically, again, we expect that students would know what they're studying when they come into university. Grades in the US are based on a number of, I guess, assessment points and touch points along the way, often including attendance and participation. In Australia, the grading can be much more exam heavy. So you could expect to have 1 big exam that accounts for a majority of your grade, and then another maybe 2 or 3 other assessment points along the way. Good. Admissions. So I'm just trying to get through this quickly so I could pass to my friends. Admissions are largely based on GPA and standardized tests. We don't look at sort of a letter of interest or letters of recommendation. It's pretty much straightforward with regard to your academic merit. In Australia, there are undergrad fast track programs, and so those are direct entry into medicine, law, and veterinarian schools. And financial aid, again, so a lot of the universities in Australia do accept US financial aid, but it's merit-based in terms of scholarships in Australia. So over to Todd to talk about academic and student life.
Great, yeah. So I think one thing to realize is that it's standard that Australian universities are going to be very large by American standards. So I think the smallest university in Australia is like something like 20,000 students. And, my university is like something like 50,000 full-time undergraduate and graduate students. You have to be comfortable that you're going to be in a really large environment and that some of your introductory classes might have some really large lectures of several hundred students. However, we do have a feature in Australia that any subject or course is going to be accompanied by a tutorial, which is going to be a small group discussion or lab if it's STEM related. So I think that Astoria was saying that it was a bit more rigorous in terms of the grading and fewer assessments. If we could just go to the next slide, please. So I think that Australian universities are a really good fit if you're a really more independent, resourceful learner. Certainly, you can reach out to your academics and there's lots of support. One thing I found strange when I went to Australia to study was that all of the academics were on a first name basis, call me by my first name. So they're very approachable. And I think it's a good fit. Most Australians live within like 100 miles of the coast. So most of our universities are going to be in an urban or suburban environment. And I think, yeah, the Australians are kind of a little bit more laid back in terms of their approach so that you really have great academic rigor, but also friendly, comfortable, easygoing place. And if you'd like to do things a bit different, we'll get into a little bit more that our academic year is different. Our seasons are opposite. All right, next slide, please. And certainly we're going to support you with a dedicated international student orientation and really try to integrate you with the regular student, the domestic student orientation. I think another common feature of Australian universities being very international. On average, we probably have something like 20% international students. That's kind of like the minimum in Australia. And if you want to live on campus in the dorms with a meal plan, we call those colleges, just to confuse you. There's also options for like student apartments to buy. And I think one of the interesting things is that whether it's college or a student apartment, everyone gets their own room, which is sometimes different from here in the United States. We might not have the big game on the Saturday, night or afternoon. Certainly there's lots of sports, whether it's going to be at the intramural level or intervarsity, and clubs and societies are, just like here in the States, a great way to really get involved and enhance your experience at uni, as we say in Australia. Okay, next one. Okay, and certainly there's going to be a lot of support for you for learning differences, but also for academic skills for success, peer mentoring, academic advisory. So really that, there's going to be a lot there to help you through and engage, just as you would here at the university in the US. I think that's it for academic and student experience. All right, on to financing, which is a very important thing.
So we'll just talk about, oftentimes people say, oh no, attending university overseas is far too expensive, I could never do it. And this slide here, it shows some examples of how it actually is quite affordable. Now this slide looks at some costs in California, but you can liken those costs to some universities in Ohio. So for example, I know that tuition fees at Ohio State University are around $33,500. And on top of that, there would be room and board. So you can liken that to something around this UCLA in-state fee. So the total cost of a degree would be around $143,000. Whereas if you look at the total cost of the Australian degree, it's much, much less. And it goes up as you look at sort of the more private schools and liberal arts schools can often cost more per year. So if you look at the overall cost, I think you'll find that the savings is quite remarkable as you look overall comprehensively at tuition and board and then accommodation as well. So on top of tuition and board, it's always important for our students to know that there are accommodation. Accommodation means rooming and board, so housing and food. Transportation is roughly between $13,000 to $18,000 per year. One thing that's really nice about your student visa in Australia is that students are able to work up to 20 hours per week while you're in study periods, and then outside of those study periods, you can work full time. You'll notice that the Australian minimum wage is currently at $19.49 per hour, which is quite different to our minimum wage here. Again, most Australian universities will be offering merit-based scholarships, so based on your academic performance. And it's not based on needs, so that's something that's also a bit different to understand when looking at studying in Australia. Right now, the exchange rate is quite favorable. So it's a good time to consider studying in Australia. And then another great benefit that can't be understated is that when you apply for your student visa and you look to study in Australia, one of the requirements is that you have overseas healthcare insurance. So that's a one-time fee of around $3,000 that covers your whole undergraduate degree. And that means anytime you would need access to medical care, hospital visits, prescription medications, it's all covered under that one-time fee. So quite affordable as well.
Okay, we're heading over to the application process now. It is a little different from school to school, so it's best to go direct to the university that you want to apply to work out what you'll actually need to apply. Each of our universities have application links, so we don't have the equivalent of Common App or UCAS in Australia, so you do need to apply directly. One nice thing is a lot of the universities in Australia are free to apply to, or they do have quite a low fee compared to a lot of the US institutions, so it's well worth looking into that. We also offer rolling admissions, so you could apply at any stage during your senior year and get a response within about 2 to 3 weeks on average at each university. Most schools do require the SAT or the ACT test. However, some schools have gone test optional at the moment due to COVID-19. We also look at your transcript, although we very rarely sort of put much emphasis on your GPA. Having said that, due to COVID-19, we do look more so at that at the moment. Some schools do require the AP exams, others don't. So again, you will need to look at each individual Australian university to determine what the application process is. One thing that Tori mentioned in the beginning was we don't have essays or recommendation letters or interviews as part of our application process. It's very much an academic-based process. So although we think it's fantastic what you've done throughout your schooling, generally speaking, we very much rely on the academic results throughout your junior and senior year. And it's very transparent as well. So you could look at an Australian degree and know exactly what you need to enter that program. So in theory, we should have 100% acceptance rate because it's very transparent. Quite different to the US system, but essentially it's just, we believe you're mature enough to make the decision of where the right fit for you. So a different philosophy, essentially. If you do hold an Australian or New Zealand passport, the application process is a little different, but we do ask you contact us directly and we can help you through that process. Now we're heading over to Melbourne and Deakin University.
So hello again, everyone. Like I said, my name is Tori Ellenberger. I'm currently based in North Carolina here in the US, but I studied in Ohio for my undergraduate degree at Baldwin-Wallace University, and as part of that degree program, spent some time over in Australia and then eventually ended up living there and starting my family there, but have recently moved back here to the States. I represent Deakin University, which is based in Melbourne University, and I'd like to just tell you a little bit about Deakin. So next slide, Leanne. Thank you. So about us. So Deakin is quite young. We were established in the 70s, and we are a comprehensive teaching and research university. So that means we rank in world-class rankings in a number of our discipline areas, and really pride ourselves on a teaching environment that we create at Deakin. We've been known as Australia's digital academy, so long before anyone considered having to go online, Deakin has always been a distance education provider as well as traditional face-to-face. So we're quite adept at ensuring that students' experience online and with technology is optimal. So I mentioned earlier, I think Todd was mentioning earlier about the size of our universities. Deakin has around 60,000 students and 4 campuses. So you can see on this map here, that's a map of Australia. This is the state of Victoria. And then there are 3 of our 4 campuses here. Melbourne is the most sort of, it's about 30 minutes outside of the city by tram, with a tram stop right on campus. Then Geelong is a waterfront campus, beautiful sort of beachy environment. And then Warrnambool is a bit further out down the road, right along this beautiful scenery here of the Great Ocean Road. Next slide, please. So some of the things that Deakin is well known for would be exercise and sports science. So we often rank in the top 5 in the world for our exercise sports science programs, as well as sport management. We're strong also in education and nursing. And like I said, a number of our subject rankings are up there in the top 100 to 200 in the world. So anything you could want to study, we could welcome you to Deakin. Next slide, please. So like I was saying, we really pride ourselves on the student experience at Deakin. So not only are we world ranked, but we also ensure that our students are getting what they need out of their learning environment. And what does that mean? Essentially, that means we've worked with our students and our academics in-house to ensure that the learning environment, both physically and technologically, is aligned with how students work and learn today. We've got personalized dashboard systems that will help you with keeping your assignments in order, as well as Deakin's own personalized digital assistant. I'd recommend you check it out sometime because it's quite advanced and constantly learning. It's called Deakin Genie, and basically whatever you need help with in the Deakin environment, Genie can help you navigate. And much like other universities, all the universities in Australia, we're required to keep our academic content online so that revising and going back and listening to your lectures is quite easy. Next slide, Dan. Again, here are the overall key study areas that we offer at Deakin. And like Leanne mentioned earlier, we do require SAT or ACT and a high school diploma. At Deakin, we have 3 trimester dates. So our first trimester, and the biggest one, starts in March. And then we have another start date in July and a 3rd in November. So depending on when you finish up, whether you want to do sort of an internship or some summer work before you head over to Australia, we can likely accommodate a start date in one of those 3 trimesters to align with what it is you're doing. I think that's the end for me, Leanne. Yep. Again, these are our global top rankings, and we'll head over to Melbourne.
Okay, hello again, everyone. I'm Todd from the University of Melbourne. So I'd like to welcome you to Australia's 2nd oldest university, dating back to 1853. We are kind of like an Ivy League down under, a major research public university, quite comprehensive, very large with over nearly 70,000 students full-time and part-time. We're proud to rank 26th in the world, and many of our programs feature in the top 40 internationally. So this is a kind of just a sample overview of the campus, and we're right in the heart of Melbourne. If we can go to the next slide, please. So we have just we've streamlined our degrees to have just 8 bachelor's degrees within the areas agriculture. We have a pre-vet program. Arts refers to humanities and social sciences and the liberal art, biomedicine, commerce, design, a pre-architecture program. We have a separate campus in the downtown area for fine arts and music, as well as science, including engineering and IT. So our degrees are only 3 years, but within that, you are going to have 25% of your degree called breadth subjects, which can kind of like Gen Ed in the States, but it really can be tailored to whatever you want to study, and you don't have to declare a major until halfway through your degree. Our admissions is going to be based on SAT or ACT, and we are not test optional, but because of the difference in the academic year, probably actually wouldn't have to present those exams until later in your senior year. And you'd be looking at a minimum score of somewhere between 1320 and 1400, or for the ACT, something like a minimum of 28 to 30. That's going to depend on each of the degrees. We do set a minimum GPA for each of our degrees, which is going to range from like a 3.2 to 3.5. And we're only one of 3 Australian universities that require AP exams. And this will be specified for each of the degrees that you're doing. If you don't have an AP exam, you could, if you're doing a university level subject, you can have that submitted for assessment to see if you meet the prerequisites as well. And so there's just some kind of shots of our campus and city. And if we can all go down to the next slide, please. We appreciate that coming all the way to Australia for your university is a big step. So if any of you are freshmen or juniors, come check us out our Young Leaders program next July, where you can come for 1 or 2 weeks. Each week, explore a different topic, live on campus in the colleges, which are the dorms, make friends from around the world. And we do have scholarships for students from the US. This program was canceled this past year, but we're confident that it'll be running next year. As Leanne said, because we're making great, significant strides in getting the pandemic under control. And finally, on to the next slide. We're just about to close applications for the Amazing Spaghetti Machine competition. So within the next few weeks, if you get a team of mates together from your school to build a really funky, crazy machine, the winning team comes to Melbourne on scholarships for the Young Leaders program. All right, and next slide. And all of this in Melbourne, the city 7 times voted most livable city in the world. Melbourne is a city of cafes and live music, sports capital of Australia. Our beaches are about 45 minutes away. Sydney beaches are nicer, and sometimes we do have 4 seasons in a day, but we also have easy access to Australia's stunning natural beauty. And we're right located in the heart of Melbourne. Okay, I think that's it for Melbourne. So yeah, there's 2 of us based in California, so please reach out with any other questions.
Perfect, thanks Todd. So now we are heading up to Sydney, which is the world's most Instagrammable city. As you can see, it's very stunning on the Sydney Harbour. Macquarie University is actually located about 30 minutes from the downtown area of Sydney. So the best of both worlds, the big cosmopolitan city experience with the incredible beaches, and then you can retreat back to campus, which is a really beautiful Parklands University. As you can see here, there's a train that goes between the city and the campus as well. So although we are a suburban campus, it's very easy to sort of get access to the big city experience as well. Macquarie has about 40,000 students, and of that there are about 12,000 international students, so one of the world's most diverse universities. Certainly one of my favourite things about it. I did a Master of International Relations at the university, and I loved being in class with people from all over the world. It makes your learning so much more impactful, having those everyday conversations with people as well. As Todd and Tori said, our degrees in Australia are 3 years in duration. So our degrees, we don't do general education essentially. So you need to know what you want to study. If you're not entirely sure what you want to do and you're thinking there's quite a few different options that you're pondering, you can do a double degree. So for example, you could do a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Science and do a couple of major and minors within that program. And then you sort of experience what you like. And then I recommend students do a Master's and then they can really specialize into a specific area if that's what you're thinking. Alternatively, you can certainly just do the 1 degree and do a major or minor in that and then do a Master's degree, and you complete that within 4 years. years. So there's a lot of flexibility when you're deciding what you want to do and how you want to do it. If you do decide to do a degree like international business, for example, and decide it's really not for you after the first semester, you do have the ability to change. It may mean you study for an additional semester, depending on what classes you've done and what program you want to go into, but there is much more flexibility there. If you're familiar with the UK programs, they are pretty strict. If you're going into an international business degree, that's what you're doing for 3 years. The Australian program is a little more flexible, which is great for students. We specialise in international business, accounting and finance, as well as our media and journalism are very well ranked. Engineering, we specialise in software and telecommunications engineering. And fun fact for you, Macquarie academics actually invented Wi-Fi, so you're welcome. Marine Science is also a great program. You actually do your placements on the Great Barrier Reef. And we also have a top 100 globally ranked teaching and psychology and linguistics program. We also have a very unique medical degree. So it's actually 6 years out of high school that you can become a doctor in our program. So you do a 2-year Bachelor of Clinical Science and then a 4-year Doctor of Medicine program. And we own and operate our own hospital. So from day one, you're fully embedded into the hospital system. It's also quite unique in that in your 5th year, you spend 3 months in India at our partner hospital in Hyderabad, India. And then in your final year, you're actually able to come back to the United States and do a clinical placement at Dartmouth College or Washington St. Louis as well, which are top 10 globally ranked medical schools. So if you're thinking about doing that pathway, it can be really helpful. Engineering and law in Australia are 4-year degrees because they're professional programs, but as I was saying, the rest are generally 3 years. We generally take the SAT or ACT score. Average SAT is about 1200, ACT is about 24, but for students applying in 2021, we will be test optional. So we will be looking at your GPA. Average GPA is about a 3.2, but the higher the GPA, the better the scholarship. And it is quite obvious online exactly what GPA you will need to gain entry into each of our different degrees. And I'm more than happy to work with you to make sure you're on the right track for the program that you want to study as well. We do offer accommodation on campus. We have about 3,000 beds available for students. It's not guaranteed and it's certainly not compulsory, but I definitely recommend it, especially if you're a first-year student. Coming from your hometown, it's nice to have that additional support available to you. And as Todd was saying, students do have their own bedroom and generally their own bathroom as well. Australians do find it quite bizarre that Americans share bedrooms in college. So that's just a nice cultural difference as well that you can enjoy while being in Australia. As soon as you arrive in Australia, we will pick you up at the airport and take you back to your accommodation. If you are coming with your family, we'll certainly pick them up as well, whether you're staying in a city hotel or you're going straight to campus. We're very flexible with that. We have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week student wellbeing services as well for students. So if you get getting a bit homesick or if you just need additional help, we are always there for you. As I was saying, we do own and operate our own hospital. So everything you really need is there on campus, and lots of different academic support available to make sure you excel in your studies. And we do have lots of clubs and association, as Todd was saying previously. The only difference is we don't have the NCAA in Australia, but we do have the Australian University Games, which is a highlight for a lot of students when they come and study with us as well. Sydney is very beautiful weather as well. I forgot to mention that in the beginning. Winters, generally, if they get below 65 degrees, we'll complain it's too cold. In summers, if it's above 90 degrees, we generally complain it's too hot. So quite a Mediterranean climate there. So anyone who's hoping to escape the Ohio winters, this is the perfect place to go for your studies. I think that's it from me. Does anyone have any questions?
We haven't had any questions come into the chat yet, so please use the chat if you'd like to reach out. So I have a question for the group that has come up a lot. So first, we should note that all Australian universities will accept the International Baccalaureate. And if you're doing the IB, you do not need to submit an SAT or ACT or those AP exams. Question for you and Tori and Leanne. So because we have a different academic year, students would be graduating in, say, like June in the United States. And if they wanted to start, in semester 2, which is like in late July or August, so maybe, Tori, do you think students are disadvantaged at all by coming in mid-year? And also, Leanne, what if, like, what's deferrals like? Like, I'm just not ready to want to like start a couple weeks later for my university degree. You know, how easy is it to get a deferral at an Australian university?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can go first. So we have the semester system. So students do commence in February or July, and Australian students actually finish their high school in the end of December. So they generally take summer vacation over sort of December, January, February, and then commence at the end of March. But because we do have so many international students, it's about 50-50 as to whether students commence in the February or the July. It's quite common in Australia to take a gap semester or a gap year as well. So for students commencing in the July, you will certainly have many other students in the same situation as you, and there is a big orientation as well. We certainly understand that students want to take a semester off because it is about 6 weeks after you finish high school, and we allow students to do a deferral, no problem at all. Tori?
Yeah, so as far as students being disadvantaged by starting, you know, later in the year, absolutely not. So we offer the same sort of orientation welcoming program, and it's really just another starting period. So for students who aren't ready to start right in July, we can welcome you in November, or we can work with you to come back in March the following year. So no, absolutely no reason why we couldn't help out with that, and that it should be any different experience.
Yeah, I would echo that at University of Melbourne. I think that's pretty true for most Australian universities, that, you know, a lot of our core subjects are offered in semester 1 or semester 2. So it's not like you're going to have these challenges of like sequencing of classes.
Right.
And yeah, I've had students surprised at how quick and automatic deferrals are. So I had a student, I think like you just had to like, you know, apply online and just tick a box saying that he wasn't going to be doing any other university studies during his, you know, deferral, and like the reply came within minutes, like, yes, you have a deferral. So I think that's another difference from the United States.
Definitely. I think it's always good to keep in mind that we are flexible. So if anything comes up along the way, or you're not certain of anything, or about timing of the visa and when to book certain things, please always just be in touch, because that's why we're here, and that's why we're sort of working in the same time zone as you are. So bear that in mind. Reach out with any questions like that you might have.
Awesome.
I have a question that comes up a lot that I thought I might throw to you, Todd. One of the things with regard to student support, are there any services on campus for students who might need individual learning plans or accommodations for learning support services?
Absolutely, yeah, we touched upon this briefly, but you know, we're required by law, and I think, you know, it's important. All Australian universities value diversity and inclusion. So whether it's, you know, needing more time or how you take your exams, you know, I've had students with muscular dystrophy, you know, working, you know, with in terms of their access to buildings, and you know, students. So there's a full range of services. And I know at Melbourne, like all of like the academic skills for success of like modules that you could do, these have been built with learning differences in mind. So I think there's going to be a lot of support for students, plus for all students, things like peer mentoring or academic advisors, you know, the career service.
Perfect. Tori, do you want to sort of just go over the application process of a student thinking about studying in Australia right through to getting a visa?
Yeah, sure. So essentially what we recommend is that when you're starting to apply for universities here in the US, it's a good time to also start your application for an Australian university as well. So the first step is getting your application in and any sort of supporting documentation that you might require. And that will all be very clear and transparent on all of our websites. And certainly you can touch base with us along the way as well. So once you submit your application, you're going to want to wait to hear back from the university to confirm that you haven't, you know, there's nothing else that you need. So once you get your letter of offer and you're accepted into the university, you'll want to accept your place, and then we'll start the process of applying for your student visa.
Perfect. And then just as a student accepts their place in the program, they purchase the overseas healthcare insurance as well. And most Australian universities do offer full offers with condition of graduating from high school. So you can certainly apply early on in your senior year if you choose to, and you'll know you've got a place at university, which is really helpful. And the visa process is really straightforward as well for US students. It's all online. You don't have to visit a consular or embassy, which is quite unique to Australia. In most other countries, you will have to do that. So it's an additional easier process, I guess, as applying to other universities around the world. Australia makes it very transparent for students.
Leanne, as our resident Australian, I have a very important question. So if I were to invite you over this Arvo for some snags and maybe nibble on an Avo, what exactly am I talking about?
Well done, Todd. So you have just invited me over for a sandwich and a barbecue in the afternoon, and probably some avocado as well.
Yeah,
Australia has some quite unique lingo.
We do speak a form of English there, and yeah, most of it you can send. But what I love about Australians love to make everything short and sweet. So, you know, breakfast is brekkie, a presentation is prezzo, you know, university is uni. So it's a great thing, and you'll quickly get the hang of the slang.
Is there any other questions that come through at the moment? Or should we?
That's it.
I think that's it.
Perfect. I hope this information is helpful for everyone. Our email addresses are here. Please feel free to reach out. We are more than happy to help and help you through the process of applying to Australia.
Thanks. Bye.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to share just a few more announcements before we leave. Let me get my screen pulled up. Once you close out of this window, there'll be a quick 4-question survey that you can complete. You're also encouraged to sign up for more sessions through the OACAC website, which is www.oacac.org. And as a reminder, this will be recorded, or was recorded, and will be available on the website along with the other sessions that OACAC is offering. Thank you all so much for attending, and thank you so much to our presenters as well.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.